Suncoast. We're gonna sing Mighty is the One. Mighty is the one who's for us. Mighty is the one who's strong to save. Yes, he will make a way. Yes, you will make a way. Endures forever, our God. All right, we're going to our new song this morning. I did that God is for us. He keeps fighting for us. Can work together for our good, 'cause you are loving. You give us more than we deserve. You are unfailing, and we are more than conquerors. Savior, is in you our future is secure. By your power, 'cause we will not be shaken. We will not be silent. It is powerless, our God is for us. We will not be broken. We won't be defeated. That is powerless, our God is for us. Consider all that He has done. He's carried, and by His we've overcome. Now we stand redeemed, and we are more than conquerors. Savior, is in you our future is secure. By your power, 'cause we will not be shaken. We will not be silent. Stand is powerless, our God is for us. We will not be broken. We will be defeated. That is powerless, our God is for us. We will sing out, sing for the hope found in His love. As we will sing out, sing to our God. Oh, we will sing out, sing to our God, found in His love. Oh, sing out, sing for our God. Oh,
We will not be shaken. We will not be silent. It is powerless, our God
is for us. We will not be broken. We won't be defeated. That is powerless. Our God is for us. We will
not be shaken. We will not be silent. It is powerless, our God is for us.
We will not be broken. We won't be defeated. That is powerless. Our God is for us.
I'm standing at your door. My heart is calling yours. Come fall into my arms. You're weary from it all. Been running for too long. I'm here to bring you home. I'm reaching out. I'll chase you down. I dare you to believe how much I love you now. Don't be afraid. but you are my masterpiece, and you are the reason I sing. This is my song for you. I said every star in the place, so you will remember my name. 'Cause it is all for you. My love, my love. 'Cause you are my masterpiece, and you are the reason I stay. This is my song for you. I'm reaching out, I'll chase you down. Come on, I dare you to believe how much I love you. Oh, I love you. Don't be afraid. Know that I am your strength. We'll be walking on the water, dancing on the waves. I'll be walking on the water, dancing on the waves.
Let us sing worthy. Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live in you. Oh, we live. Sing his name, Jesus. Jesus, the name above every other name. Worthy could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live in you. Oh, we live in you. Sing holy. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Worthy of every song we could ever sing. Worthy of all the praise we could ever bring. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live in you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Oh, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live in you. Oh, we live. Oh, we live. Oh, we live. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those of holy, holy, holy. There is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes and show me Oh, church, we have God on high. We put our whole faith in, our all hope, all of our trust in. We know that He is the only foundation, that firm foundation that we rest upon. Sing, I will build. 'Cause I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are. Fill me with your heart and lead me. Heal up those around me. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart and lead me. Give your love to those around. I will build my life upon your love. And as a firm foundation, I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken.
All right, good morning. If you have your Bibles, turn to Matthew chapter 22. We're in Matthew chapter 22, and just to introduce this thing, Matthew chapter 22 is all about whose authority it is. And we know whose authority, in Matthew chapter 22 it comes from. The different groups that came about in this chapter continued to kind of prick at this authority thing, and they were trying to get the crowds to go along with their thinking if they could get them to slip up in one way. And actually, there are 4 different questions that Jesus gets asked. Last week we looked at number 1, where the Pharisees came to Jesus and asked him in that verses a little bit about where his authority came from, and is it lawful to give tribute to Caesar? As we look today, my dad wanted me to give you all an interesting illustration. So, Jordan, if you've got that up, I've got the lady's name, Glenn Wolfe. She was, let me make sure I get the, So Glenn Wolfe, she is the Guinness Book of World Records for the most husbands that she ever had. So she had a total of 29. She was 89 years old. She died in 1997. She lived in California, and her shortest marriage was 19 days. Her longest was 11 years, which me and my wife are about to go on 11 years. So that was the longest she ever went. And, she, as we look at this chapter, we look at these verses, the Sadducees asked Jesus this question about the resurrection. All of us at one point or another in life have struggled to come up with an answer to something. for me in high school, it was all about math. I tried not to answer any questions when it came to math because math was my weakness. And, for most kids it is that way. It could be a boss that, have you ever got that where why are you calling in kind of thing? And you struggle if you didn't know, we get those calls. We used to get those calls at UPS and they'd be a minute or two long and we'd just sit and laugh as they tried to come up with an excuse. Here's the amazing aspect of Jesus' life. In all of these questions and all of these exchanges, we see a brilliant response to every question that's asked. And as we look at this question today, I hope you walk out of here as I did reading these verses, just stunned at how well he puts these answers together. Some of us, I know, I was talking last night at dinner, we get to a point where end of the night or the end of a day where we had those conversations with people and we sit in the dark and we think, I wished I would have said that. I wished I would have thought that. And it's an amazing aspect that Jesus never had that part in his life where he felt that way. Today we're going to look at that question of looking at the resurrection, and we'll look at also why he is the God of the living. Verse 23 is where we're going to begin. Verse 23 of chapter 22 tells us, the same day came to him the Sadducees, and it says, which say that there is no resurrection, and asked him, saying, Master, Moses said, if a man die having no children, his brother shall marry his wife and raise up seed unto his brother. So first off, we need to know a little bit about who the Sadducees were. Now, we know that they were the Pharisees and the Sadducees. We know that the Sadducees were a Jewish sect at the time of Jesus. They didn't last forever. They kind of like crumbled once the temple of Jerusalem fell. When the Rome came and fell, the Jewish temple fell, it kind of ended the reign of the Sadducees. It kind of took that second, broke them apart. But they were a group that denied not only the resurrection of the dead, which in verse 23 it tells us, it also did not believe in the existence of spirits. And also they did not really take to oral law. When oral traditions, when people would pass down the things of the Jewish religion, they really cast that off. They didn't believe in that. The only thing they did take to was the 5 books of the Old Testament, the Torah. Okay? They read that as the supreme law. Okay? They thought that was what Moses wrote in Genesis and taken through the first 5 books of the Bible. That is what they held to. So, their question started with them talking about the Moses and his decree, what he got from God, telling us that if a man die and he does not have offspring, then the wife must marry the next to the brother. Okay, so his brother. This comes from actually Deuteronomy chapter 5. That's where all of these circumstances come out of. So it's coming out of Deuteronomy chapter 5. And let's continue on in verse 25. Now, there were with us seven brethren. Okay, so 7 brothers. There were 7 brothers total. And the first, when he had married a wife, deceased. And having no issue, no kids, left his wife unto his brother. Okay, so it went to his brother next. That was the next in line. So he continues. Likewise, the second also, and the third, and down to the 7th. So 7 brothers. So it went, she had 7 different spouses. Okay? And so in verse 28, they ask this question. Therefore, in the resurrection, whose wife shall be of the 7? For they all had her. Okay, they all were taken her as a spouse. So as we look at these couple of verses, we see a lot of holes in there. Okay, first off, this was a group that did not believe in the resurrection in the first part. Okay, so their question was about the resurrection. Okay, so it's almost, as they asked this question, it had all right around a lot of fallacies in that. Okay, and they also were very brash with their question. Okay, it was very tongue-in-cheek. It was not they were trying to trip up Jesus. They were trying with their questions to kind of make him get nervous. Okay, as a teacher, I know this to be true. Okay, when a person asks a question that we struggle with, it's going to first off get us a little nervous. Okay, get us rattled. Okay, and that's what they wanted Jesus to do. They wanted him to get rattled, and they wanted him to basically pick one of them, pick the first, pick the seventh, whichever one they would have picked. It would have been wrong because of the Moses' law. So their question about the resurrection had a lot of holes. There were some errors to this, and Jesus, starting in verse 29, begins to tear those holes apart. Okay, they had two different errors in what they believed in this question. What the elements of this question came out of, there were two basic errors. Verse 29, Jesus answered. I love that he answered them, okay? He didn't tell them, you're wrong for your question, okay? He understood what they were coming from. He understood Deuteronomy chapter 5. So there was an argument of, well, I don't understand this question. Can you rephrase it a different way? He didn't say that. He went straight into one of their basic errors. Jesus answered and said unto them, ye do err, not knowing the scriptures, nor the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry, nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels of God in heaven. So their first error that they made was that we love in a different way in the resurrection. Okay? We're going to love differently. Okay? It's not going to be a less different. It's going to be a very much more different and a more deeper love that we're going to have with one another. Our love in heaven is not an earthly love. Okay? Are we going to know our spouses? Yes. But it's going to be in a different way. It's going to be in a much deeper, profound, it's not going to have we're going to have heavenly bodies. So it's going to be a ton different. Okay? So he first pokes that hole in their first question, telling them that they don't know the power of the scriptures. They don't know how powerful what they just said, what they really understood it to the effect that they should have read that and said, this is not about this earth. This is about heaven. So our love in heaven, of course, is not going to be less. It's going to be very much more, because our love is going to be an everlasting love. Okay, there's not going to be, we have a finite time on this earth, but in heaven, it's forever. Our love doesn't just go for a certain time, it goes forever. And that's what he wanted the Sadducees to understand, is that they don't understand what the question they just asked, how powerful it is. And also the second error, and that is in verse 31 through 32. He says, but as touching the resurrection of the dead, if we're going to go there, we're going to go to the resurrection of the dead. He says, have you not read that which is spoken unto you by God? So we're going to back up and go to Exodus chapter 3. We need to see what where he's taking this from. Okay, Exodus chapter 3 tells us a little bit about where he's mentioning this. And we're just going to start in verse 1 to kind of pick up from there. He says, "Now Moses kept the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he held the flock to the backside of the desert and came to the mountain of God, even to Horeb. And the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in the flame of fire out of the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will not turn aside and see this great sight, and why the bush is not burnt. And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see God, and he called unto him out of the midst of the bush. And he said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Draw not nigh thither, put off thy shoes from off thy feet, from the place wherein thou standest is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the God of thy father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. So in these verses, he's telling them, he's reading from the Torah, okay? As he's talking to this group of Sadducees that supposedly were very about the law and about the first 5 books. He takes it and hits them right with these verses. In doing so, he's trying to get them to ask more questions, okay? He's trying to get them to say, okay, you know these scriptures, and you know these things, and you know how to answer this question. What more? Okay, he wants them to come nigh. He wants them to come and say, as Moses did, here am I. Okay, he's saying, he's wanting them to get to that point where they ask the question about the resurrection of the dead. Hey, I am that person. I am the God of Abraham. I'm the God of Isaac. I am your God. Okay, and he's wanting to tell them, hey, come on, tell us more, ask me more questions. You know, we as teachers, I love when kids ask questions because I want them to do those things. If it doesn't get to that point, the learning stops. It's over. But the more questions you ask, the more things you inquire, and the more things you inquire about God, the more you begin to learn more and more. Okay, but we're going to see their response in just a minute of what they did and what they responded to. But how powerful this is. Not I was the God of Abraham or I was the God of Isaac. He's going to say in verse 32, if we go back to Matthew 22, he tells them, I am that God. I am the God of Abraham. I am the God of Isaac. I am the God of Jacob. And he's telling them, I am not, and he does more than Exodus did. He said, God is not of the God of the dead, not of the God of Moses and Isaac and Jacob and where they are now, okay? He's the God of now, the God of the living, the God of the present, every minute, every day. He's telling them, this is who I really, really am. So he wanted them to draw closer to his voice, okay? If they came that far, continue on, okay? Ask me more. Because I want to answer those questions. He's saying the ball is in your court. This is your ballpark, right? They should know more than anybody else about Genesis through Numbers. Every verse they memorized, they knew. Okay, if I know this, what other questions can I ask? Okay, that's what he wanted us to get to. So as we look at that, one more verse that I wanted to share with you guys is John 11:25. And this is another account where Lazarus was being raised from the dead. And before that, you know, he's wanting Martha, as she asked the question, she's saying, you know, in chapter 11, verse 23, Jesus says confidently, your brother will rise again, okay? And Martha, you know, says, hey, I know at the last days, I'm confident. This is her response to this, is I'm confident that you're going to do it, that it's going to happen. If it doesn't happen today, it's going to happen, okay? She's confident about that. And so, but Jesus says unto her, I am the resurrection. I am. and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. That's where he wanted the Sadducees to get to, okay? To be confident that, yes, he is that person. Jesus is the one that is the resurrection, okay? Not anyone else. We're not searching for anything else. We're not trying to find it. We have confidence, as Martha was, that he is that way. And so as we flip back to Matthew chapter 22, we see their response. As we look at it, the multitude's response, not the Sadducees' response, but the multitude. And when the multitude heard this, they were astonished at his doctrine. They were taken away. Their breaths were taken away, as my breath was last night, as I read this and how powerful it is. If we really truly believe in it, this is who we serve. This is who we believe in. And they were astonished. The Sadducees walked away. Their questions were answered, and they couldn't ask another one. Okay? So as we look at this, 3 things that I want to mention today. The first is that error begins when we take our eyes off of heaven. Okay? The Sadducees were all about the law. They were all about what they believed in. They trusted in those things, but their error was that they did not take it further. They did not continue searching. Okay? Their searching ended, and they were dogmatic about saying, this is all it is. And the point Jesus wanted them to come to is to look to him, to draw nigh. Okay, we have questions. We know that we're going to, throughout life, we all have had those things. But as we ask those questions, always keep our eyes on heaven, because that's where we're going to get those answers, where we're going to find the hope that Martha had, the confidence that she had in John 11. Number 2, the great teacher is never fazed by our questions. Okay? Never, for all the questions that we have, he's never taken back. He's never left us in a hole. Okay? When we ask the questions, he answers them. Okay? And if you have questions today, if you have, doubts and you have fears about the future, I can be confident that as we look at these verses, God can answer those questions. God can be there for us no matter the question that we have. He's never far away from us when we ask those questions. And number 3 is that his reach always extends farther than our logic. Okay? The Sadducees had a logic. They had an ideology. They had their beliefs. Okay? And Jesus did not condone them. He didn't say your question's invalid. He said, I'm not going to answer that because I don't need to. He wanted them to draw closer. He wanted them, his reach continued for them. He never in the scriptures gives them or says they're a lost cause. Okay? And as we look in our logic, we have, God's given us a wonderful mind and a wonderful ability to think and to be able to, come up with our own conclusions. He doesn't bring us along as robots where we have to make a certain decision. God leaves it to our will. And he says to us, come to me, all you that are weak and weary, heavy laden. And what is he going to do? He's going to give us rest. Okay? He's going to give us the answers that we need. And he's going to give us that peace that we need. Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for the day you've given us. We thank you for this amazing, amazing response from Jesus, telling us that his resurrection, his coming earth is going to be far, far different than this world. This world now that we live in, we know what we have in the future is going to be magnificent. And also that we know that your life is going to be inside when we go to heaven, when we experience heaven. We know that your love is going to far exceed our greatest questions and greatest predictions that we think it's going to be. We thank you for that. We thank you that you're powerful, that you're able to meet us in our need, in our greatest need. You know that you're there with us in all that we do. We thank you for today. We thank you for the time we have together, and bring us back at the next time we're appointed. In your name I pray.